What if the polls in each of the key battleground states here on this 2024 Electoral College map miss the final results like they have in the last few presidential cycles? I've gone back and calculated the average polling error across the 12 most competitive states on the map from the 2008, 2012, 2016, and 2020 cycles, so that in today's video we can take a look at what the race to 270 electoral votes would look like if that same polling error occurred in these grayed out states. To be a little more clear, I will be adding this weighted error number here that you see in this column, which is weighted to account for recency, so that the 2020 error accounts for more than 2008. And then I will add that number to the latest polling average available on Real Clear Polling, and then use that adjusted results to assign likely, lean, tilt, and toss-up ratings on our map. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. I'll be going through the states in alphabetical order, so starting in Arizona. Trump leads Harris by an average of 1.6% right now, 48.4% to 46.8% across the 5 most recent surveys taken over the last month. Now taking a look over at the previous polling error here in Arizona, Republican presidential candidates have outperformed polling by an average of 2.3% over the last 4 elections. Most recently, the polls underestimated Trump by exactly that number, 2.3% in 2020, as Biden only ended up winning by 0.3%, while the 538 average had him ahead by 2.6% entering Election Day. Now, Arizona is actually the only state on this entire sheet in which the Republican has been underestimated in all 4 cycles. Favorite son, John McCain, by 5 points in 2008, Mitt Romney by 1.6% in 2012, and then Trump by 1.8% and 2.3%. Now going back to that weighted average, if we add this R plus 2.3 number to the latest Real Clear Polling average, Trump's lead then expands to 3.9%, as 1.6 plus 2.3 is 3.9, and that means we'll place Arizona down as leaning towards Trump here in the second lightest shade of red. Keep in mind that margins less than 2.5% are tilt, 2.5% to 7% lean, 7 to 10% likely, and anything greater than 10 is safe. Next up, we have the electoral behemoth, Florida. 30 electoral votes are at stake in the Sunshine States, where the polling average is Trump plus 6 exactly right now, with the former Republican president drawing 49% of support to Harris's 43% on average, again, based on the last 5 surveys. Now, the fact that Trump does lead Harris by such a comfortable margin here is hardly surprising, as Florida has been shifting more rapidly to the right than any other state in the country over the last few election cycles. Taking a look over at the polling error, again here, it has underestimated Republicans by a similar 2.5% on average since 2008. That error was most egregious in 2020 as Biden led in 538's final average in Florida by 2.5 points, yet Trump carried the state by 3.4%. The largest margin for a presidential candidate here since 2004, and making it one of just 5 states where Trump actually did better than he did in 2016. Now, Trump was also expected to lose Florida against Hillary Clinton in 2016, according to the polls, yet he prevailed by just over a point. With all of that said, Trump's 6-point lead over Harris in the Real Clear average right now is therefore adjusted to favor Trump by 8.5 points, and that translates over to a likely Republican rating here on our map. Then just to the north of Florida, let's go to Georgia, where Trump leads by an almost identical margin as in Arizona, 1.7% here, 48% to 46.3%. Taking a look over at our polling error sheet again, the polls in Georgia specifically have actually been very accurate over the last decade. All 4 misses were within the margin of error, including in 2016 and in 2020, when Trump overperformed by a lot almost everywhere else. He was only underestimated by about a point in both of these elections, and the overall weighted error adjusted for recency comes out to just 0.5% bias overestimating Democrats, so the average hardly moves from R plus 1.7 to R plus 2.2, keeping it in the tilt Republican column. Along with Arizona, this would be a second flip for Trump, as these 2 states were 2020's closest states at D plus 0.3 and D plus 0.2% respectively. Now let's jump over to the first state in our core Rust Belt trio, Michigan. Arguably the bluest of the three in terms of fundamentals and demographic trends, currently Harris does maintain her advantage here according to Real Clear polling. 1.7% is the margin, with the vote share split at 49.3% to 47.6%. Harris has led in this average since becoming the presumptive Democratic nominee back in late July. Now, Michigan did vote for Joe Biden by almost 3 full percentage points in 2020, considerably to the left of both Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. For those reasons, Michigan is considered a must-win for Harris. If she were to lose this key Rust Belt battleground, there's a good chance that all of the other less Democratic-friendly swing states would have also backed Trump by an even wider margin. Now back over on our poll error sheet, we see that polling in Michigan has underestimated Republicans by 1.7% on average across the last 4 presidential races. That includes a 3.5-point Trump overperformance in 2016 and by 5 points in 2020. Now this, coincidentally, is the exact lead that Harris currently holds in the polls in Michigan, meaning that the adjusted result becomes an exact tie, and therefore the state goes in the pure toss-up column on our map. Jumping 2 states to the west to our next state, Minnesota, Harris's running mate, Tim Walz's home state, the Real Clear polling average has the vice president leading by 5.4% on average, with all 3 surveys here showing her leading by around that average, 5 or 6 points. That is about a 1.5 lower than Biden's 2020 margin here, though, which was actually a 2-point underperformance relative to the polls in that cycle that had him leading by 9 points. Now, the overall weighted error in Minnesota is R+2, meaning that Republicans have been underestimated by a similar degree to Michigan, Florida, and Arizona. The largest miss here in Minnesota came in 2016, where Clinton led by more than 7 points headed into the election, yet came just about a 1.5 from a surprise loss. Now, with a 2-point adjustment to the polling average, Kamala Harris's lead drops to 3.4%. That is still in the lean Democrat range here, regardless, as 10 electoral votes for Minnesota are added to the vice president's tally. Let's shift back out west again now to Nevada. Harris currently holds a lead of 0.2% based on the 4 available polls included in this latest average. It's 47% to 46.8%. Now, Nevada has voted blue in each of the last 4 presidential races, and the polling history in the state actually suggests a slight overestimation of Republicans, with an average bias of 0.6% in their favor. It's actually one of only 2 states to underestimate Democrats here on this sheet. The polls did, of course, still overestimate Biden in 2020, again, just like every other state. Yet in 2016, 2012, and 2008, the polls underestimated Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Now, if we adjust for this historical bias, Harris's lead increases from 0.2% to 0.8%. Still very much within the margin of error, but enough for it to tilt in her direction here on our electoral map. Our next state is all the way up in New England, here in New Hampshire. Biden +7 in 2020. Just like Minnesota, Trump came very close to flipping it in 2016, before it then shifted hard back into the Democratic column. The latest average from Real Clear polling has the vice president leading Trump by 7.7%. So that would be an improvement upon Biden's 2020 margin here. Yet with that said, the Granite State has a historical polling error of R+2, so a 2-point underestimation of the GOP on average. Harris's adjusted polling advantage therefore decreases from 7.7% to 5.7%, going from likely blue to lean blue here for Democrats on the map. Over in North Carolina now, the average shows Trump with an ever so slight lead of 0.1%. Just a 1/10 of a percentage point separates the 2 candidates here, 47.6% to 47.5%. With 8 polls included in this average, Trump leads in 5, Harris in 3, and every single one of the margins falls in the individual poll's margin of error. It's a remarkably close race here in the Tar Heel State right now. Yet again, with that said, North Carolina does have a historical polling error overestimating Democrats by 2.5%. Most notably in 2020, the polls here had Biden leading by nearly 2 points, according to 538's final polling average, yet Trump carried the state by 1.4%. Clinton also led in 2016 when Trump ended up winning by almost 4 points. So with a 2.5 point adjustment in favor of Trump, the average goes from R plus 0.1 to R plus 2.6, meaning that North Carolina and its 16 electoral votes lean in favor of Trump on our electoral map, just barely escaping tilt territory. Alrighty, with 4 states left to go, I want to take a second and please ask you to subscribe to my channel down below. According to my channel analytics, less than 1 in 4 of my viewers are actually subscribed. So again, if you could please just take a second and hit that button, it's completely free and it does help me out tremendously. Thanks a lot. Alrighty, with neither candidate reaching the necessary 270 electoral votes just yet, 82 electoral votes remain without a rating. Trump leads with 222, narrowly ahead of Harris's 219, as we head to Pennsylvania. The Keystone State is one of 2024's top battlegrounds, and the latest average from Real Clear Polling has Harris leading by less than a point at 0.7%, 48.3% to 47.6%. This average continues to flip-flop back and forth. Now, the polls in 2016 and 2020 did underestimate Trump, though, with misses outside the margin of error. While Clinton led Trump by 4.1% headed into Election Day in 2016, Trump won by 0.7%. And while they did correctly predict Biden's victory in 2020, they overestimated his margin by 3.5 points. So the average bias comes out to R plus 2.2, which means that Pennsylvania's latest polling margin flips from Harris plus 0.7 to Trump plus 1.5, another flip for the former president as it tilts in his direction. Now this one would almost certainly lift Trump above 270 electoral votes, assuming of course that he also wins in Texas. It is this most efficient path for Trump that has been talked about all cycle long. All he needs to do is hold North Carolina and then just flip Georgia and Pennsylvania. He could still lose Arizona in that scenario, along with Nevada, Wisconsin, and Michigan. On that note, let's go to Texas now, the second largest state in the nation with 40 electoral votes at stake. Trump leads by 7.3%, according to Real Clear Polling. This is about a 1.5 points wider than his winning margin in 2016 of 5.6%. Now, Texas does have a historical polling error overestimating Democrats by 1.9% since 2008. That is influenced most heavily by the 4.5 point underestimation of Trump in 2020, where 538 had Biden within a point of Trump headed into Election Day, only for Trump to win by again 5.6%. Ultimately, though, Trump's 7.3 point average lead increases to 9.2 points with the added error. So either way, Texas is down in the likely camp for Trump on our map. That officially lifts him up and above 270 electoral votes to 281. Penultimately, let's head to Virginia, where the latest average shows Harris leading by 4.5 points. Now, Virginia did vote for Joe Biden by 10 points in 2020, so this is still less than half that, as the polls all cycle long have shown a tighter than expected race. And that is especially interesting, considering that Virginia has underestimated Democrats by 0.1% on average. That is the narrowest miss on net across these 4 elections. As while Trump was underestimated in 2016 and 2020, they were both within the margin of error, whereas Obama overperformed by a wider margin in 2012. All things being said, though, the weighted error does mean that Harris's 4.5 point lead increases to 4.6%. So over on our map, we're going to place Virginia down, leaning in Harris's direction. Now let's close out the video in Wisconsin, which usually does come last or near last due to not only its order in the alphabet, but also because it is one of 2024's most competitive states. Taking a look at the Real Clear polling average here in the Badger State, Kamala Harris leads Donald Trump by exactly 1 percentage point. Like in Michigan, the VP has held an advantage in Wisconsin since late July. She is polling in 49% on average compared to Trump's 48%. Now, Wisconsin has notably been decided by less than a point in 4 of the last 6 presidential elections, including both of the last 2. In terms of the previous polling error, though, Wisconsin has seen 2 of the strongest underestimations of Trump in the last 2 cycles. Hillary Clinton led by 5.9% in the final 2016 average, yet lost by 0.8%. And then Biden led by 8.4% in 2020 and only narrowly won by 0.7%. So the overall weighted error is R plus 4.3. That is almost double as high as any other state. So we have our third flip of the video here, as the average miss completely erases Harris's 1-point lead to become Trump plus 3.3. And that means that Wisconsin goes from tilt Democrat to leaning towards Republicans on our electoral map. So with that said, using the latest polling averages in key battlegrounds across the country and then shifting them by the average error in the previous 4 presidential elections, Donald Trump would win the 2024 presidential race with 291 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 232, with 15 electoral votes in Michigan as a toss-up right now. As always, you can feel free to comment your thoughts and feelings about this map in the comment section below. I appreciate all positive or negative comments. Also, make sure to let me know down there what other 2024 related videos you would like to see in the future. Shout out to my channel members on screen here. Thank you so much for your support. If you'd like to become a member, go ahead and click the join button below this video to receive exclusive perks. Make sure to subscribe to my channel down below as well, and please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. You can check out more content from my channel here, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.